The skies over Earth darkened as the Zhur fleet descended, their ships like dark clouds on the horizon. They came from 1,000 light-years away, convinced that humanity was just another easy conquest to add to their list of countless worlds. They were wrong. But the humans had no idea how wrong they were. On a quiet stretch of land in Montana, Ray sat in the ruins of his old home, staring at the sky. His world had been ripped apart in a matter of hours, families torn from each other, cities reduced to rubble, and entire populations scattered. But Ray wasn't one to cower. He couldn't afford to. Earth's military was overrun, and the Zhur were ruthless, treating humans like ants to crush under their boot heels. Ray had always been an ordinary man, just a mechanic before all this. He didn't have any special skills. No extraordinary strength or training. But what he did have was the fire to fight back. His wife, Jenna, had been taken in the chaos. His daughter, Lily, was somewhere out there, he didn't know if she was alive or dead. And he would do anything to find them. As the Zhur began to set up their command posts, Ray knew it was only a matter of time before they began rounding up the survivors, enslaving them, or worse. But then something unexpected happened. Ray's small team of survivors, men and women from all walks of life, had stumbled upon something that didn't belong, a piece of alien technology, barely functional, hidden beneath the wreckage of an old military base. It was strange, even by Zhur standards, and no one could understand it at first. But as Ray studied it, something clicked. There was a power within this technology that seemed to react to his touch, to his very presence. The Zhur had underestimated the human ability to adapt, and this discovery proved it. By the time the Zhur fleet's first assault on Earth had ended, the human resistance had already started fighting back, not with brute force, but with the kind of ingenuity that only humanity could harness. And Ray, an unremarkable mechanic, had become the unlikeliest hero in the fight for survival. The twist, however, was just beginning. What the Zhur had missed, what they never saw coming, was the resilience of a species pushed to the brink. And Ray was about to discover that humans could do more than just survive, they could adapt and fight back in ways no alien could ever have imagined. Ray's eyes burned from exhaustion as he stared at the strange device in his hands, trying to make sense of it. The object seemed ordinary enough, an unmarked metal box with faint blue lights flickering across its surface, but there was something more to it. It hummed with energy, as though it had a life of its own. "Ray, you're not gonna believe this," came a voice from behind him. It was Zara, the youngest member of the resistance, her face smeared with dirt but her eyes bright with determination. Ray turned and nodded for her to continue. Zara was quick, resourceful, exactly the kind of person they needed on this ragtag team. "I found something. Something big." She pulled out a set of Zhur plans she'd managed to steal from one of their command posts. The pages were filled with schematics and alien symbols, but one part caught Ray's eye, a detailed diagram of a Zhur neural control network, showing how their ships were all linked together by an advanced AI. "The Zhur think they're in full control," Zara said, her voice tight with the weight of the discovery. "But they didn't count on us being able to adapt. This neural network, it's like a link between their technology and their minds. If we can tap into it, we might be able to control their systems." Ray stood still for a long moment, his mind racing. The human race had always survived by its ability to think on its feet, to improvise, to overcome. They had no advanced weaponry, no fleet to match the Zhur. But this was something they could work with. This was a chance. "We need to find more of these devices," Ray said, his voice steady. "If we can reverse engineer them, maybe we can use their own tech against them." The team gathered around the table, studying the plans. For the first time since the Zhur's invasion, Ray saw a spark of hope in their eyes. The human spirit was far from broken. But that hope was fleeting. The Zhur, as if sensing the resistance's sudden shift in energy, launched a new wave of attacks. Their ships blotted out the sun, and the first blast of their advanced weaponry ripped through the sky. The world trembled under the force of their assault. "Ray, they're coming," shouted Eric, a grizzled soldier who had been with Ray since the beginning. "We need to move now." But Ray didn't move. He stayed rooted to the spot, his fingers running over the surface of the device. Something about it felt familiar. As if it was waiting for him to make a connection. And then it happened. A shock ran through Ray's body as the device hummed louder, its lights flaring bright. For a moment, he thought he was losing his mind, but then the device clicked. His mind flooded with images, alien codes, symbols, and the Zhur network. He saw their fleet, their operations, and something else, a weakness. The Zhur fleet wasn't as invincible as they had thought. There was a flaw in their AI system, something that could be exploited. Ray had never expected to find something like this, but now it was clear, humanity had a fighting chance. "We have to act fast," Ray said, voice grim yet determined. "We've found their weakness. Now we take it." Zara's eyes were wide. "Ray, did you just—" "I don't know how," Ray admitted, his hands shaking slightly. "But we can use this. We have to." The rest of the team stared at him in awe. They had just discovered a way to turn the tide of the war. It was an impossible dream, but for the first time, it didn't seem so impossible anymore. Ray led them out into the open, where the Zhur ships were already descending. He knew the battle would be fierce, and he wasn't sure if they could win. But he knew this much: humanity had a new weapon, their adaptability. And the Zhur had no idea what was coming. The first wave of Zhur ships had already begun their descent, leaving trails of fire and smoke as they rained destruction on cities below. Ray's team, armed with little more than makeshift weapons and stolen alien technology, was scrambling to put their plan into action. They had learned that the Zhur had one major vulnerability, an error in their AI system, and it was time to exploit it. The resistance had no time to waste. The Zhur were fast, efficient, and ruthless. If they didn't act soon, it would be too late. Ray stood at the head of his team, gripping the device that had sparked their chance at survival. It was a strange piece of alien tech, but to Ray, it felt more like a lifeline. "We have to get to that command center," Ray said, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. "It's our only chance." The team nodded, determination in their eyes. They moved quickly, weaving through the rubble of a once bustling city, avoiding the Zhur patrols that scoured the streets. Despite the ever-present danger, there was a new sense of purpose in their movements. They had something the Zhur didn't: human ingenuity and resilience. But even as Ray led his team forward, a nagging doubt crept into his mind. The Zhur were powerful. They had superior technology, better weapons, and an organized command structure. Could a small group of humans, armed with stolen tech and little more than a dream, really stand a chance? As they neared the Zhur command center, the weight of the situation hit Ray like a punch to the gut. They had no backup, no reinforcements. If they were caught, it would all be over. But they couldn't stop now. The survival of humanity depended on what they were about to do. They reached the command center, a massive, towering structure of alien design. Ray's team carefully approached the main entrance, using the stolen Zhur plans to navigate the complex. But just as they were about to make their move, an alarm blared, sending a chill down Ray's spine. "Ambush!" Zara shouted. She was the first to react, pulling her weapon and firing at the oncoming Zhur soldiers. The rest of the team followed suit, but it was clear they were outgunned. The Zhur soldiers were quick, and their energy shields made them nearly impossible to defeat. Ray's heart pounded in his chest. They were surrounded. The Zhur had anticipated their move, and they were ready. This wasn't just a battle for survival anymore, it was a fight for humanity's very existence. "We need to retreat," Eric said, his voice tight with fear. There's no way we're getting through this. But Ray couldn't give up. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. He glanced at the device in his hand, feeling its power humming beneath his fingers. It had worked before. It could work again. He just had to figure out how to harness it properly. Everyone, fall back. Ray commanded, motioning for them to regroup. We can't let them trap us here. I've got an idea, but I need time. As the team retreated into a narrow alley, they fought off wave after wave of Zhur soldiers. The battle was intense, but Ray's mind was elsewhere. He had to find a way to tap into the alien technology, to make it work for them, or they were finished. Ray, we can't hold them off much longer. Zara shouted, ducking behind a stack of debris to avoid enemy fire. Ray's eyes flickered toward the device. There had to be a way to control it, a way to make it respond to their needs. The Zhur were depending on their AI, but what if they could turn that AI against them? His thoughts raced, and then it clicked. He knew what he had to do. Get ready, Ray said, his voice sharp with newfound resolve. We're going to override their systems. The team didn't ask questions, they just followed his lead. Ray activated the device, feeling the strange hum of energy course through him. The connection was almost immediate. He saw flashes of Zhur communication, their neural network, the commands being sent to their soldiers. It was all there, waiting to be accessed. Now! Ray shouted, and with a final push, he sent a signal coursing through the Zhur command network, overriding their systems. The Zhur soldiers froze, their energy shields flickering before going dark. The humans took advantage of the momentary confusion, pushing forward with everything they had. It wasn't a flawless victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Ray's team had managed to disable the Zhur's immediate defenses, giving them a much-needed edge. The Zhur were still a powerful foe, but now they were vulnerable. As the team pressed on, Ray couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. For the first time since the invasion began, they were winning. The Zhur had underestimated humanity, and that was their greatest mistake. But the real test was still ahead. The Zhur would adapt. They always did. And Ray knew that the real fight had only just begun. Ray's heart was still racing from the skirmish, but there was no time to rest. The battle had only intensified since they'd taken down the Zhur's outer defenses. Their next objective was clear: get to the core of the Zhur command center and disable their communications, the key to taking down the entire fleet. But the human resistance was wearing thin. The team had already suffered losses, and with no reinforcements, every step forward was a gamble. As they made their way through the corridors of the Zhur command center, the air was thick with tension. Ray could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him, each decision could mean life or death for the people he cared about. The device, the one that had sparked their last victory, was tucked securely in his jacket, its alien hum pulsing faintly, as though anticipating the next move. "This is it," Eric muttered, his face set in grim determination. "If we don't disable their communications, we're done for. The rest of the fleet will come down on us like a hammer." Ray nodded. "We don't have a choice. We need to make it to the core, and fast." But as they approached the entrance to the central chamber, the lights flickered, and a sudden metallic clang echoed through the hall. The team froze, their weapons raised instinctively. "Did you hear that?" Zara whispered, scanning the shadows. Ray's gut twisted. Something wasn't right. The Zhur were ruthless, but they had never been this quiet. Their usual, cold, calculated movements seemed hesitant. It was almost as if they were waiting. Then, from the shadows emerged a figure, a tall, imposing Zhur soldier, but there was something different about him. His armor was scratched, his posture broken as if weighed down by something more than just the weight of his suit. Ray instinctively raised his gun, but the figure raised his hand in a peaceful gesture. "Stop," the soldier said in perfect English, his voice strained, almost regretful. I'm not here to fight you. The team stared, bewildered. Ray's finger tightened on the trigger, but he hesitated. The soldier didn't look like any of the others. He seemed tired. I've been with the Jur for years, the soldier continued, his voice low. I've seen the destruction we've caused, and I can no longer ignore it. I cannot go back to them. Not after what I've seen. Zara took a cautious step forward. What are you talking about? You're one of them. The soldier nodded. Yes, I was. But I saw something in you. Something unexpected. You're not like the other species we've conquered. You fight. You adapt. I've been monitoring your movements, and I know what you're planning. Ray narrowed his eyes, still unsure whether to trust this mysterious soldier. Why should we trust you? The soldier's expression hardened. Because I've lost everything. I've lost my comrades, my family, my purpose. I want to help you. I want to see the Jur fall. I know their weaknesses, their systems. And I know how to shut them down. A moment of stunned silence hung in the air as the team processed his words. This was unexpected, an enemy turning their back on their people. But Ray, ever the pragmatist, didn't allow himself to get lost in disbelief. Why help us? Ray asked, his voice sharp. Why not just disappear? The soldier's shoulders slumped. Because I believe what you have is worth saving. Humanity, you've inspired me. And in this war, you are the last hope of the universe. You deserve a chance to fight. A real chance. Ray looked at his team, exchanging uneasy glances. This was a gamble, but it was one they couldn't afford not to take. With a resigned sigh, Ray nodded. All right, Ray said, his voice firm. We'll take your help. But if you double-cross us, there's no going back. The soldier gave a solemn nod, a flicker of relief crossing his face. I understand. My name is Drax. As Drax led them deeper into the command center, guiding them through secret passageways and bypassing heavily guarded checkpoints, Ray's mind raced. Could they really trust this former enemy? What if it was all an elaborate trap? Every part of Ray's instincts screamed to be cautious, but something in Drax's eyes told him that this man wasn't lying. They finally reached the central chamber, the core of the Jur's power. But just as they were about to make their final move, an alarm blared, signaling that the Jur were aware of the intruders. Get to the control room, now. Drax barked, pulling out a hidden Jur weapon. I'll hold them off. Are you insane? Zara exclaimed, grabbing his arm. You can't take them all on. I don't have a choice, Drax replied, his voice resolute. I'm not leaving here alive anyway. I'm doing this to make sure you have a chance to stop them. Ray hesitated for a moment, then made his decision. We'll cover you. But you'd better not make me regret this. As the team moved quickly toward the heart of the Jur operations, they could hear the sounds of a brutal firefight breaking out behind them. Drax was buying them precious time, but Ray knew the clock was ticking. They had to get to the control room before it was too late. The walls of the Jur command center seemed to close in as Ray and his team sprinted through the corridors. Every footstep echoed louder than the last, every breath a reminder of just how close the enemy was. Drax had bought them some time, but Ray knew that the final battle was upon them. If they didn't act quickly, all of their efforts would be for nothing. The Jur were formidable, and they were not known for mercy. We're almost there, Ray panted, glancing back to make sure the rest of the team was still with him. Zara, Eric, and the others were right behind him, their faces grim but determined. The weight of their mission had never felt heavier. Can you feel it? Zara said quietly, her voice full of wonder. We might actually pull this off. Ray didn't respond. He didn't want to jinx it. But deep down, he could feel it too. The resistance had been a long shot from the start, but somehow, they had managed to gain ground. The Zhur underestimated humanity's resourcefulness. They had underestimated them. They reached the control room, massive, intimidating, and heavily guarded. But Ray had known this was coming. The Zhur wouldn't let them get this far without a fight. As they crouched behind a large, alien pillar, Ray surveyed the scene. The control room was a maze of high-tech consoles and alien machinery, each one brimming with power. "We need to disable the communications," Ray said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline rushing through him. "Once we cut them off, the fleet will be blind. We'll have a chance." Eric gave a curt nod. "Right. Let's move." But as they rushed forward, a familiar voice boomed from across the room, sending a chill down Ray's spine. "Not so fast, human." Ray froze. Standing at the far end of the room, bathed in a cold, alien light, was the Zhur Emperor himself. His towering figure, clad in dark, ornate armor, seemed to exude an air of undeniable power. His cold, reptilian eyes locked onto Ray's with unnerving intensity. "You've come far, I'll give you that," the Emperor continued, his voice laced with disdain. "But you are not worthy to defeat us." Ray swallowed hard. The Emperor was everything the Zhur stood for: cold, calculating, and relentless. He was the final obstacle in their path. But Ray refused to back down. "You've underestimated us," Ray said, his voice full of defiance. "We may not be as strong or as advanced as you, but we have something you'll never understand. We fight for each other. And that's something you can't defeat." The Emperor chuckled darkly. "Your fight is meaningless. You cannot win. The Zhur are eternal." "Not today," Ray retorted. "Today, humanity fights back." The battle began in an instant. The Zhur Emperor's guards, dozens of heavily armored soldiers, charged toward Ray and his team, their weapons crackling with deadly energy. Zara, quick as ever, took aim and fired, downing two of the soldiers before they could even take a step forward. Eric and the others followed suit, using the alien technology they had scavenged to hold their ground. Ray, however, focused on the Emperor. He had to disable the central communication system. If he could cut the link between the Zhur's command center and their fleet, it would be a game-changer. But the Emperor wasn't going to make it easy. With a wave of his hand, the Zhur soldiers parted, creating a path straight to Ray. "You really think you can stop me?" the Emperor sneered, his voice oozing with arrogance. Ray gritted his teeth. "I'm not stopping you. I'm stopping us from losing." He reached for the device, the key to their victory. As he activated it, a surge of power pulsed through his body, making his hair stand on end. The device hummed louder, its energy crackling as it interfaced with the Zhur central systems. The Emperor's eyes widened in shock. "No. You can't." But it was too late. Ray had already made the connection. The Zhur's communication network began to flicker, then shut down entirely. Their fleet, which had been poised for a final assault, was now completely blind. Ray turned to his team, eyes alight with fierce determination. "It's working. We've got a shot at this." But the Zhur Emperor wasn't finished yet. He charged forward with terrifying speed, his blade raised high. Ray barely had time to react before the Emperor swung down with lethal force, striking with the precision of a predator. Ray barely managed to block the blow with the alien device, but the force of the strike sent him sprawling backward. Pain exploded through his chest as the Emperor loomed over him, ready to deliver the final blow. "I should have crushed you all when I had the chance," the Emperor hissed. "But now you will die for your insolence." Ray's mind raced. This was it. He had given everything for this moment. He could feel his life slipping away, but there was no fear, only resolve. Just as the Emperor raised his weapon to strike, a flash of movement appeared from the corner of Ray's vision. Drax. The former Jur soldier had entered the fray. Without hesitation, Drax launched himself at the Emperor, his weapon raised in a desperate bid to protect Rey. The two collided in a blur of motion, their strength and fury clashing with devastating force. The Emperor was a skilled fighter, but Drax fought with a desperation that Rey had never seen before. He fought for something greater than himself. The clash was brutal, but it was Drax who landed the final blow, taking down the Jur Emperor with a decisive strike. Rey gasped for breath, struggling to push himself to his feet. "You did it." Drax looked down at him, his face a mix of exhaustion and relief. "We did it." The Jur Emperor's body crumpled to the ground, his once imposing form now reduced to nothing more than a lifeless heap. For a moment, the entire control room fell into a stunned silence. Rey could hardly believe what had just happened. Drax, an ex-enemy, a former member of the very force that had tried to destroy Earth, had just struck down the leader of the Jur Empire. The victory, however, felt hollow. The battle wasn't over. Far from it. The Jur fleet, now blind and confused, was still out there, but their leader's death would send shockwaves through their ranks. Yet, as Rey glanced at Drax, he knew that it hadn't been just the Emperor they were fighting. It was everything they stood for, their entire way of life, and Rey couldn't shake the feeling that this was only one step towards something bigger. But before Rey could catch his breath, the alarms blared once again. The central control room trembled, and the screens that once displayed Jur communications now flickered wildly. A new, even more ominous figure appeared on the far side of the room, a towering general, her armor pristine and gleaming, her eyes burning with cold hatred. "I told you, human," she said, her voice icy and precise, "we are not done yet." The new Jur leader, General Zethra, was everything the Emperor had been and more, brutal, relentless, and calculating. Rey felt a chill run down his spine. If the Emperor's death had been a shock, this woman's presence made it clear, the Jur would never yield without a final fight. They wouldn't just fade into the shadows. She was here to make sure that humanity's hope died along with her predecessor. Drax's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, but Rey stopped him. "Let me handle this," he said, his voice steady. Drax's gaze flicked to him, a mixture of respect and wariness in his eyes, but he nodded. Rey knew this would be the final moment, the point where all their efforts would either come to fruition or come crashing down. They had no choice but to fight. "I didn't come this far to back down now," Rey said, stepping forward. "We've beaten the Emperor. We can beat you too." Zethra's lips curled into a cruel smile. "You humans, always so defiant. It's what makes you so entertaining." With a snap of her fingers, the room was flooded with Jur soldiers. They came at Rey and his team from every direction, their energy weapons flashing with deadly light. Rey felt the rush of adrenaline course through his veins as he dodged the first wave of fire. He didn't hesitate. This was it, the moment to fight for Earth's future. "We need to hold the line," Rey shouted, as he dived behind a nearby console, returning fire with a Jur weapon he had stolen earlier. Eric and Zara followed his lead, picking off the approaching soldiers with deadly precision. But even with their best efforts, the Jur forces were overwhelming. Rey's mind raced. They couldn't just keep fighting forever. They needed to end this. But how? It hit him then, the device. The one that had helped them hack into the Jur's neural network. If they could access it again, they could turn the tide. But the device was in the middle of the room, surrounded by Jur soldiers, and every step they took toward it meant risking everything. "This is our only shot," Rey said through gritted teeth. "We push forward. Now." Without waiting for a response, Rey surged toward the device, dodging blaster fire as he sprinted across the room. Behind him, Eric and Zara followed, providing cover. As they neared the device, Rey's heart pounded. He could feel the Zhur soldiers closing in, their guns trained on them. Almost there. Zara shouted. Ray's fingers grazed the device, and just as he was about to activate it, a blinding flash of light exploded from the side. Zethra had joined the fray, her own weapon charged and ready to fire. Ray barely had time to react before the blast hit him, sending him sprawling to the floor. Everything went silent for a moment, the world spinning around him. His vision blurred. He could hear Zara and Eric shouting his name, but it felt distant, as if underwater. Pain shot through his side where the blast had struck, but Ray refused to give in. He had come too far to die now. Too much was at stake. With sheer willpower, Ray forced himself to stand. His legs shook, but he pushed forward, activating the device just as Zethra advanced on him, her expression filled with malice. And then, it happened. A wave of energy burst from the device, flooding the entire room. The Zhur soldiers faltered, their weapons going haywire as the neural connection between their minds and their fleet was severed. For a moment, Ray thought he had failed. But then, as if on cue, the Zhur soldiers stopped moving entirely. Ray's pulse raced. It worked. They had done it. The Zhur's entire communication system, their control over the fleet, was gone. And with it, their ability to wage war. Zethra stood motionless, her face contorted in disbelief. Her soldiers had been neutralized. The Zhur fleet, without their commands, had turned into an unruly mass, their ships now drifting aimlessly through space, unable to respond to any of the Zhur's directives. No, Zethra whispered, her eyes flashing with fury. You ruined everything. Ray stood, bloodied but resolute, as he faced the defeated general. It's over. Zethra glared at him, but she didn't move. It was as if she knew the war had already ended. Humanity had survived, and it had won. The silence that followed the chaos in the control room felt heavier than any battle. Zethra stood motionless, the last symbol of the Zhur's endless pursuit of dominance. Her expression was a mix of disbelief and rage, as if the weight of the defeat had not yet fully settled on her. But despite the venom in her gaze, Ray felt a strange sense of peace. The Zhur were defeated. It was over. For now. Ray slowly approached the fallen general, his movements deliberate and calm, the weight of the situation sinking in. There was no triumph in his heart, no joy in this victory, just a deep, unshakable relief. He had led his team to the final battle, and they had won, not through strength or advanced weaponry, but through the resilience, ingenuity, and unity that had been humanity's greatest weapon all along. Drax, who had stayed by Ray's side throughout the final confrontation, stepped forward. His face was weary, but there was a quiet pride in his eyes. You did it, he said softly. You all did it. Ray nodded, looking over at his team. Eric, Zara, and the others were gathered together, bloodied but alive. They had made it through, against all odds. The Zhur were not invincible. And humanity had proven it. But Ray's thoughts weren't just on the victory. They were on the cost of it. The sacrifices, the pain, the losses they had all endured to reach this moment. His mind flashed to Jenna, to Lily, to all the families torn apart by the invasion. He couldn't bring them back, but he could honor them. Honor the resilience they had shown in the face of the unimaginable. We won, Ray said quietly, almost to himself, his voice thick with emotion. But at what cost? Zethra's cold eyes narrowed as she watched the humans regroup. You think you've won? The Zhur Empire will rebuild. It always does. Your little victory will be short-lived. Ray's gaze hardened. You're wrong. This time, it's different. He turned to his team, his voice rising with conviction. We didn't just survive. We fought back. We found a way to adapt, to overcome, and to change the course of history. We proved that no matter how many times we're knocked down, we will always rise again. And that's something the Jur can never understand. The team stood silently for a moment, absorbing his words. There was no grand celebration, no applause. The victory wasn't one of fanfare or glory, it was one of survival, of hope, and of human spirit. Ray turned back to Zethra. You may think the Jur will rebuild, but this time, they'll remember who fought back. And you'll remember this day. Zethra's face twisted with rage, but she said nothing more. She knew, as Ray did, that the Jur had underestimated humanity in a way they could never reverse. The fight wasn't over, but humanity had proven its worth. And that was enough to change everything. In the weeks that followed, Ray and his team helped organize the remnants of Earth's forces, building alliances with other planets that had once been under Jur rule. The universe had witnessed humanity's strength, and now it was their turn to be a beacon of hope for others. Ray didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew one thing for certain: humanity's resilience had been tested, and it had prevailed. Ray stood before a group of young survivors, his voice steady but filled with the wisdom of someone who had seen the darkest of days. We've been through hell, Ray said, his words carrying weight. But we survived. And as long as we stick together, as long as we keep fighting for each other, we will always find a way. Don't let anyone ever make you believe you're not strong enough to make a difference. Because we've already proved that we are. The young faces before him nodded, some with tears in their eyes, others with quiet resolve. Ray knew they would carry this lesson with them, the lesson that humanity's strength came not from the might of its armies, but from the power of its spirit. As the sun began to rise over a world scarred by war but not broken by it, Ray looked out across the horizon. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, hope glimmered on the horizon. Humanity had survived. And it had learned one of its greatest truths: the greatest weapon it had was each other. No matter what came next, they were ready. And that, Ray thought with quiet satisfaction, was what would carry them forward into the future.